Officially welcome to the 1L Club. For all those joining us today, the session is about multiple choice. All right, a very important part of law school and the bar exam. And so everything about today is going to get you right and get you ready for scoring well on this portion of your exam. So let's start off with our intro. All right, so here it says multiple choice is a common testing format in law school and on the bar exam. For the UBE exam, that's going to be changing soon. The multiple choice questions are going to look different. We're not worried about that right now. For law school exams, we're going to get some traditional questions. Many of us come into law school with a natural strength or weakness with multiple choice questions. But all of us can take the proper steps to become proficient in this arena. So I want everybody to get essentially a little uncomfortable right now. Not anything extreme, just a little bit. If you have a natural strength for multiple choice, as we just talked about a second ago, I want you to still be humble to the challenge of law school multiple choice questions. So don't get too comfortable. And then if you are looking at multiple choice as a weakness, as an area that you're not as strong in, right? You're going to get all the information today to take those steps to becoming proficient in this arena. So regardless, we're a little uncomfortable, but all with the same mentality of let's figure this out and let's master it. All right, so let's do a little background information first. So first off, your multiple choice's role in your final grade. So typically multiple choice is 25 to 50% of your final exam. Sometimes it's also involved in a midterm. Again, traditional old school style professors, they don't have midterms. Your entire grade is built off of just one exam at the end. And if you have a professor that likes to have a little bit of balance, they will have a midterm, and then it may or may not have multiple choice. All right, so as we are now entering midterm season, if anybody has multiple choice coming up, this is going to be extremely beneficial. Multiple choice, what to know. Practice questions can be hard to find. All right, most professors do not provide practice questions. Some professors point you to the supplement that they use to help them make questions. And there's also the random supplement use. But when you look into random supplements, right? So for example, Chelsea just previously mentioned there's an MBE book that she uses. I'm not sure who that MBE book is made by, but the point is that they may have a style of question that's often used in there where it is, what is the best answer choice of the following answers? So it's really one of those styles of what's the best of the worst answers, right? Or what's the best of all these reasonable answers, right? Things like that where your professor doesn't use that style at all. So whenever you're using supplements, you have to just keep that in mind that it's definitely still good practice, but it is going to be maybe a little different, right, when you get to your exam for your professor. When using things that are random, not supplemented by your professor, realize that the most value that you can get out of doing those questions is from practicing your critical thinking. Okay, practicing the habits that I'm going to be sharing with you shortly on how you want to go through questions, being structured and disciplined and all those types of things. Again, because the style and tone may change. And if you have in your syllabus, your professor's like, hey, like, I really like this book or this book, right? And if that book has multiple choice questions in it, I would definitely do those, right? Because some professors don't like to write their own questions, at least from scratch. They may want to get some inspiration from somewhere and put a little tweak to it. So if they're going to point you into a certain direction, make sure you take advantage of that. And then lastly, we do have some professors, again, that will give you questions. And of course, you should do all of those. All right, so that's number one. In multiple choice questions can be hard to come by. Next, most exam questions come from class discussion. So we talked about this in one of the previous 1L Club sessions of the importance of paying attention in class, right? And as a previous law student who went through this experience, I can tell you there was so much shock when I got to the exam for some of these 1L exams when I realized, wow, they are really pulling from things that we talked about in class. So this just goes back to the importance of preparing for class to the best of your ability, and then also making sure you're participating in class in a way where you are soaking up the lessons. All right, here's the last one, right? And this is going to, I think what Chelsea was saying a little bit as well, which is these questions can be hard. They can be tricky. I think Anthony was talking about this a little bit as well. So I'm here to tell you that law school multiple choice questions are designed to be tricky. These questions are not your friends, right? Let's all go backwards, right? For me, it's a little bit further back. For some of us here, it's a little not too long ago, undergrad, right? Multiple choice for those classes, sometimes those were a breeze. They were simple, just like do you know what the definition is of some rule, right? Or do you just know what doesn't fit here, right? Very simple multiple choice questions. That's not what we have in law school. As we see here, a lot of times these multiple choice questions are really mini essay questions that you have to analyze in a very quick and short time period. Next, it says you must be quick and accurate with your triggering of the correct area of law, and you must be accurate with your analysis of the rule. So again, the whole purpose of me saying this here is that you need to have your walls up. You need to have your defense ready, right? Don't go into multiple choice thinking like, all right, cool. Like the answer is there. It's going to be easy for me to do. Let me just kind of like, wait for it to pop out. No, you need to understand that these questions are tough. You need to have your critical thinking on and really making sure you are performing well. So before we move on, I want to talk about something really quickly. I'm going to go back to Anthony. Anthony, when I say triggering, right, when you're doing questions, you have to get quick and accurate with your triggering. What am I referring to there?
Like triggering the start of your analysis process, right?
So triggering is not necessarily the start of your analysis process. Triggering is the beginning in the sense of what area of this class am I dealing with? Or in other words, what specific rule am I dealing with? Are you taking torts?
I am, yes.
Okay. Have you learned intentional torts yet?
Yes.
All right. So let's say I came over to your apartment or your house right now, and I raised my hand and I slapped you in the arm. What torts would that trigger a discussion of?
Assault and battery.
There we go. That is then a trigger. All right. So I want to get that point across that you have to get quick and accurate with your triggers, as you did just there. That was a really good example of that. You didn't stall, right? You didn't say like, what could that be, right? And it was like, no, that's assault and battery. The other thing I want you all to keep in mind is that you also must become good with your anti-triggering. Anti-triggering is based off of a scenario, things you can confidently and comfortably say will not be reasonably discussed or likely met here. So in that same scenario, Anthony, what would you say are some things that are anti-triggered as far as intentional torts when I came and slapped you on the arm?
I guess probably IIED.
IIED is out. Trespass to chattels, conversion, trespass to land, right? There's absolutely no facts. So in exams, if we're kind of naturally second guessing everything or doubting ourselves, sometimes then certain things will crowd our mind and cloud our judgment because we're just considering everything. But you have to be also comfortable pushing things to the side when they're not applicable. Is that clear, Anthony?
Yes, yeah, that helps a lot actually.
Awesome. So there we go. Now let's go past now what we need to know into why students typically struggle with multiple choice questions. So number one, they don't know the law well enough. Essays, oftentimes there are no correct answer. Okay, we talked about that a second ago. Your objective is to thoroughly argue both sides. That is from the perspective of many that like essays, that is the benefit of essays. There's no right answer. Sometimes that can annoy somebody who is just really trying to beeline it to the right answer. But once you lean into this style of essay questions, it's like, all right, the pressure's off on trying to figure out what the exact outcome is. I just need to be able to see what the parties are going to argue, effectively and thoroughly argue it from both sides. Right? There are times, though, where a correct answer is needed, but oftentimes there is no correct answer. When it comes to multiple choice, there's always one answer choice that you have to choose, and that's where the difficulty lies. You have to be 100% accurate with selecting that correct one. And then this also means you need to know the law well. You need to know the depths of the rule. So let me put something also into perspective for us. Let's go back to Chelsea. Chelsea, let's say you're taking contracts, right? Yeah, you just said contracts. In contracts, you're likely to learn, let's say, 50 different rules and topics throughout the semester. On the essay portion of your final exam, out of those 40 to 50, how many do you think would reasonably show up on the essay portion? The reality is that on an essay portion, it's likely only going to be maybe 7, right? 10. You can't test everything on the essay, right? Just because it's hard to make a fact pattern that encompasses everything that you've seen.
Everything, okay.
Yeah, right? Because it's like everything is kind of all over the place, right? If you're in torts, it's hard to have a IED, battery, false imprisonment, trespass to land, negligent, right? Everything all in one scenario. So on your essay portion, you're typically dealing with a few issues, and they're typically the more big, important issues because you can't test everything. That is then where professors use the multiple choice, everybody, to get into the depths of the rule, right? There, I can have coverage across the whole entire semester by making these mini questions that are targeted to particular areas of the law. All right, so again, it's also easier for many people to do well on the essays because it doesn't necessarily require as deep of an understanding of the law, right? Whether it's you know all the rules or again, you know the thoroughness of the rule, right? Or the full extent of the rule. So keep that in mind with multiple choice. Like it really tests the nuance, right? And so the better we know the law, the better we'll do. Next, the second reason why students don't do well on multiple choice, they second guess themselves. All right, so let me go back to Anthony. Anthony, how do you do with this? Are you guilty of second guessing yourself on multiple choice, or no? You're pretty good with picking an answer and sticking with it. Okay, so you've kind of experimented with both, and then we've seen that when you kind of sat and forced yourself to kind of spend more time on it, maybe that's in fact what you were doing was second guessing yourself. And to that point, right, you saw the results, drop. I probably would have taken the entire 15 minutes because I move slowly with multiple choice, but it's not because I was second guessing in myself. It was that I'm a slow reader when it comes to multiple choice, and I'm reading very carefully and very slow to make sure I get all of the facts. But then once I have an answer, I'm sticking with it. So all that to say, for everybody, we want to not second guess ourselves, right? As 1Ls, right? We see the note here. If you are going to sin boldly. Take a stance. Do not second guess yourself. This is a skill that I want you to practice daily. Whenever you're called on in class, whenever you're reading a case and you get to that point of in your head thinking, how is this going to likely play out? What's the outcome going to be? Take a stance and then see if you're right or wrong and be okay being wrong. But when you take a stance, you are allowing yourself to then correct that stance or validate that you were already correct. But then now you can have this internal compass that can guide you. But if you don't stand for either side to either validate that or correct that, then you're not going to later on be able to trust your gut because you've never developed your gut. So throughout law school, throughout the day-to-day, practice, hey, like, professor asked, so what do you think? Do you think this person's going to be guilty of battery? I want you to think through it, go through the rule, and like, yes, I do think. And if even though you gave a strong yes and it ends up being no, it's okay. Like, learn from it, and then you don't make that mistake again. All right. The famous saying is, you fool me once, shame on you. All right, got me. That was tricky. But you fool me twice, shame on me. So the idea is take that stance and just learn from your mistakes. All right, and the last reason why students struggle with multiple choice is that they do not have a system. So we've already, again, talked about, right, at detail how challenging law school multiple choice questions can be. If you go into these questions simply trying to freestyle them, simply trying to see which answer choice is going to pop out at you as the correct one, you are not going to perform as well as you can. You're not going to reach your potential. You need to have a strategy and stay disciplined with that. Right? And then lucky for us, today I'm going to be providing you all with a system that you can use. All right. Before we move on from this slide, I want you to notice that all of these started with they, right? Why these students struggle, they don't know the law well enough. They second guess themselves. They don't have a system. That's not going to be us, right? So as we're sitting here learning this today, make sure we're getting those rules down, outlining week to week, asking our questions in office hours, asking our questions in class. Make sure you are practicing not second guessing yourself, being okay with being wrong, not being afraid of that. All right, being comfortable in that space to learn from your mistakes. And then again, lastly, we're going to go through our system right now. So let's go ahead and get into that. So this is Legally Fit's multiple choice formula. All right, Legally Fit's multiple choice formula is a 6-step process that help you practice multiple choice questions. Focus most of your time on practicing questions to learn, not to test your knowledge and timing. So this is a very quick lesson that we could spend almost 30 minutes trying to reverse the psyche on, but I want to reverse a stigma right now. When one sits down and starts to do a practice essay or a practice multiple choice question, they naturally start to get clammy hands, nervousness, right? everything starts to feel a little just like the pressure is on. All right, and we want to get away from that. Deja, can you give me just your quick initial impression of why I want you to get away from that feeling while you're doing practice questions?
Because you said the main thing about the multiple choice is really knowing the law and knowing the rules. So when you practice to learn the laws and the rules so that when you do get to the final exam, now you know it well enough that the timing shouldn't be as much of a factor.
Exactly, right? So, and here's my little 2 cents to summarize that is that you, we naturally are going to do a practice multiple choice or practice essay to see if we know it. We're going to use that as an assessment opportunity. It's going to say, oh, I went through that midterm and man, I got 3 out of 5. And, that's where I'm at right now. And then we're going to think about how that sets us up to do on the exam. And we use that as an assessment. And I want us to focus so much less on the assessment portion and more on the learning opportunity aspect that we have with all practice questions. So I just want you to have that mentality. Every time you sit down to do a question, just constant reminder. This is not an assessment. This is a learning opportunity, right? If you never knew how to drive before, right, and I'm getting you into the flow of driving, I'm teaching you how to drive. As we get into that car for that first, second, third, fourth, fifth, 10th time, those aren't assessments of what type of driver you'll be. This is you learning the ropes. So just remember that, because again, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves that then starts to like crowd our ability to learn because we're so anxious and tight, thinking this is an indicator of how we're going to perform. Okay, so when you're doing practice questions throughout the semester, getting ready for your final exam, here's your 6-step process. The first thing you're going to want to do is read the question. Be hands-on. When you read the question, engage with it. Draw diagrams, circle the parties, underline key facts. Next, read the entire question. We've talked at length about how important reading comprehension is. The outcome of a question could come down to one word. If you miss that word, you've selected the wrong answer. So reading comprehension is extremely important. Okay, after you read the question, next thing that you do is pinpoint the specific subject and topic. Now for you all, right, this is really for bar prep, right, where you have to figure out what subject you're in, because when you get the multiple choice, it could be contracts, torts, property, etc. But you'll be sitting down for the final for the class that you know. So half the battle is done. You already know the subject. Now you just need to know what is the specific topic. So if you're in contracts, it's like, oh, this is testing option contract, or I'm in torts, this is testing battery, and specifically the known sensitivity rule, right? Or something along those lines. Here's the thought process you want to have. If I'm a professor, how do I make a question, a multiple choice question? What I do is say, hey, I want to test battery, known sensitivity rule. Then what I do is I build a factual scenario around that rule to test you. Then I present that question to you. What I need you to do is start off by reverse engineering that question. I need you to take the facts, strip it all away, dissect it, and then realize this is the particular topic that my professor had in mind when creating this question. That is your goal, is to get to what that is. Now, once you identify what that topic is, we move on to step 3, which is go to your rule. Now, again, this is very important that while you are learning the ropes here, right, while you're still being a student throughout the semester, I do not want you practicing multiple choice questions from your memory, right? I always want to see if a student can get the correct answer when they have the facts in front of them and the full rule in front of them, right? Because a lot of times that's difficult in and of itself, and we always want to iron that out first before we factor in memorization. And the other double value there, by relying on your outline and your rules to do practice essays or multiple choice, is that if your outline is not properly assisting you in that question, then that's telling you your outline is missing something. So that also helps you make your outline more complete through this process. All right. So again, a lot of us naturally want to test ourselves, like, oh yeah, let me see if I have it memorized. Well, then now you're going through the question and now you've only memorized a portion of the rule, and then now you get it wrong. Well, now we don't know if you can actually analyze thoroughly because we couldn't even get there because you never got the proper rule to begin with. So try to separate out memorization for now. Focus on always grabbing your rule. Then when you get to the final exam, you'll literally be doing the same process. Even though you won't have your outline near your side unless it's an open book exam, if it's a closed book exam, you will have your rule completely memorized by then. So it'll be the same thing. Now you're just going to your rule mentally. Okay, so always look up your rules when doing practice questions. Unless you're taking a quiz, right? Your professor is forcing you to do questions in that style, then by all means don't. But when you're on your own and you're doing practice questions, feel free to have that by your side. It is a great tool. The stigma there is that that's cheating. You can't do that. I'm here to tell you that's how you learn. Okay, that's how you learn. Now, this is important. Step number 4, you've gone through the question, you've read it, you've figured out what area of the law is being tested. You've then gone to your rule and looked at it, right? Or memorized it and jogged it to your memory. Now you have to analyze on your own and come up with the answer to the scenario. After you come up with the answer to the scenario, you then get the satisfying experience of going through the answer choices and selecting the one that matches, making it then very hard to second guess yourself, right? If you've done all that work, came up with the answer, and then found one that matched, chances are that's going to be the correct answer. So this helps prevent anybody from second guessing themselves when they've done this in this way. Okay? So those are all of the steps. The last thing that you want to do before moving on, right, when you're doing practice questions, is make sure you take notes. This is the step that few take, but it makes all the difference. Earlier on, me and Deja were talking about you have to be coachable, right? You have to be able to learn from your mistakes. If you do a practice question wrong, and because we don't like being wrong, we just got it wrong and then moved on, well, you're not going to be able to get that right the next time because you didn't sit in that long enough to figure out what do I need to do for the next time. We're going to actually get some practice with how to take notes here in a second. But yes, things you want to do after doing questions are, look, assault is usually triggered whenever battery is. That's something you gathered from doing questions. Or, hey, this torts essay is testing intentional torts. Battery is a common issue. These are all things that you can get, right? And insight you can get from doing practice questions. Taking notes, very important. All right, so here's our recap. Read the question, pinpoint the subject and topic, go to your rule, come up with an answer, select the matching answer, and take notes. Lastly, how to practice. You want to use professor-provided multiple choice questions if you are given them by your professor. If not, next thing is a supplement that is recommended by your professor, which may be tipping you off that they might be using that for inspiration for their own questions. But if you don't have that, then you can look into supplements. Legally Fit has hypos and explanations. They're not in multiple choice format, but they prepare you for that. I've taken all the patterns from multiple choice questions and have put them into short answers with in-depth explanations that prepare you for the depths of the law that you see on multiple choice. You also have LexisNexis Q&A, Emmanuel. There are definitely a lot of resources out there for practice multiple choice. This is the multiple choice tips and strategies document. I know some people might be viewing via YouTube or popping into the live session, but if you are a member of the 1L Club officially, you're going to be emailed this list, and we go into the details on each of these, right? So what does it mean to have strong reading comprehension and synthesizing the fluff, plus an example of how to do it? Right? Another one, sticking to your guns. What does that mean? And what's an example of it? So these are Legally Fit's more detailed tips and strategies. So for all those 1L members who get your weekly emails, look out for the one this week and you'll have this detailed in there. All right, that's it for today's session. I want to thank you for joining the 1L Club and learning how to do those multiple choice questions. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more content from us, please subscribe and like this video. Thank you all, and I'll see you soon. Learn more about Legally Fit and Break into Law School in the description.